And showtime, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest episode of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. A look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. My name is Rich Freeman. I am executive editor of the ChannelPro Network, one of your co-hosts on this program. With me is the other host. He is Erick Simpson, the senior vice president and CIO of SPC International, a business improvement and training organization for managed service providers and other IT providers. And he's looking sharp today. Erick, where are you?
I am in Dallas, Texas today at a client's, Rich. And how about you? Where are you out in the world today?
Well, I'm back home in Seattle. I actually spent the entire week up until this point in Boston at the Continuum show, which we will talk about in just a moment. But got home late last night, and I'm back home in Seattle, and the sun is shining in Seattle.
And you look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to boot.
Good deal. Well, the Continuum show, I was in Boston for Continuum Navigate. That's their annual partner conference. Very interesting show. They had some product news to announce, but really they weren't focused tremendously on that new product news. Really what's going on is a continuation of what they were discussing at last year's Navigate event, where they introduced for the first time this managed security portfolio that they now offer their partners. So a year ago, they unveiled that. They didn't actually roll that out into market until June, which was right when they acquired Carver Cybersecurity. So it's really only been out there a little bit, and they spent a lot of their time at the show this year just trying to get the folks in the audience to understand the strategic importance of the security market from their standpoint. And so really get people working on learning how to sell the system and actually selling it through to their clients. And so what I wanted to talk about a little bit with you, I'm going to give you the really abbreviated version of their strategic take on the market. And then get your response to it. And I'm doing that in part because I've spoken about this with some other folks, some of whom think they're right on in their analysis, and others think not at all. So here are the central planks of their belief about where the managed services market is headed. First of all, the reason they are investing so heavily in security is that they believe that security is almost an existential threat to any managed service provider's relationships with their customers. If you cannot provide the security services your clients need in order to sleep well at night, or if your customer gets breached, you are going to get fired. And so every MSP needs to be good at security. To be good at security these days on your own is very difficult because you're going to have to hire very expensive people, set up a security operations center, stock it with lots of expensive tools. So the Continuum strategy is to create a platform that MSPs can lean on and outsource a lot of that, not have to invest so heavily internally. So that's piece one. The other piece, which I think tends to be a little bit more controversial, is the idea that at least in the larger population centers in this country, the bigger cities, even the tier 2 cities, any place with about 500,000 people or more in the United States of America, and inside the really key verticals, healthcare, legal, financial services, they really believe that as consolidation continues and even accelerates in the managed services space, most business, 80% of the business basically in those verticals, in those markets, is going to wind up in the hands of bigger MSPs. And so a big part of what they try to do at Continuum is to help smaller MSPs get bigger so that they can continue to compete with these larger providers out there. So that's their view of the world. That's what drives their product strategy and their go-to-market strategy. I'm very curious to get your take on it.
Well, I think if what they're trying to do is drive more people to their particular products and services, they're probably dead on. I will disagree with both those points, however, in general.
Okay.
I don't believe that every single business owner that runs a business is overnight going to realize, oh my goodness, I need a security service provider immediately, right? I mean, we're still training folks how to transition into managed services. And you know, Rich, we were one of the first pure play MSPs in the industry back in 2005. You know, I never believed that we would still be training people how to become MSPs today. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for MSPs to still make a good living delivering services to their end user clients. What I will caveat that with, though, is yes, you should be looking after your client's security. You should be looking after your client's security. And you should be educating them on the value of that security. I mean, I work with partners all the time that are trying to sell security and training them on how to sell security, and that are running into clients that say, well, you know what, who wants my data? You know, who wants to steal my data? Well, in fact, they may not want to steal your data to sell it, but what they will do is ransom you for your own data. So think about that. You know, if you can't access your own data, what is that worth to you? So there's the other flip of the coin there. On the second point, that talks about you know, these NFL cities, if you will, being, you know, solely managed by larger MSPs. I'll disagree with that as well. I mean, you know, there are large MSPs now, and they're not overrunning the country and stealing business from the smaller MSPs. I think there's plenty of, you know, food in the sea for all different sizes of fish. And I think, you know, the more mature and larger organizations, enterprises that are looking to hire MSPs, you know, they've probably got their own internal IT folks too. So I don't really see that moving all that much. And you know, let's check back in 12 months and see if I'm right, Rich.
That sounds like a very good idea, actually. And just to sort of, you know, line up who's on which side maybe of this debate a little bit. You know, Continuum is owned by Thoma Bravo, the private equity firm. So a lot of the analysis that drives this point of view that we've been talking about comes out of the research team at Thoma Bravo. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. I will say on the other side, your side essentially of the debate, last week at the IT Glue conference that I went to, this topic came up, and Austin McCord of Datto basically said almost exactly what you just said, that there are plenty of, you know, fish in the sea, as it were, regardless of what size you are, and that this idea you've got to be big to survive seemed questionable to him. And earlier today, my colleague Matt Whitlock and I recorded a new episode of the ChannelPro Weekly podcast with special guest host Carl Palachuk, who you know very well, a consultant just like you, and he said pretty much exactly the same thing you said too.
Yeah, my money's on the consultants.
All right. Well, you are in Dallas. You're going to be flying home, what, today or tomorrow?
Yep, I fly home in a few hours.
And undoubtedly, you're going to be looking for some good reading. You've got a book tip for us?
I do, and this time it'll be an audio book, and I've just got done reading it on a last plane trip when I was in St. Louis, Missouri last week. And so my tip of the week will be to recommend this audio book. And you know what? I wasn't really typically a fan of audiobooks until just recently. And I'm really enjoying the ones that are narrated well. So this is the audiobook that I recommend for everyone, no matter what role you're in business or in life in general. It's called Extreme Ownership: Lessons, How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. And the authors are Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. They are both Navy SEALs. They are from the SEAL team who had on their team the American Sniper was on their SEAL team. And this book is so audiobook is so entertaining because you're hearing it from the actual SEALs themselves, and the way that they describe, they've taken these best practices for leadership that they've learned executing missions in Afghanistan and Fallujah and places like that, and they begin each chapter and they transition. One does one chapter, one does the next chapter, and they each teach a principle of leadership. But they start off with describing a scene or an experience in one of these, war-torn villages and the mission that they're on. And as they're describing it, Rich, I mean, I'm replaying in my mind, like watching the best war movies like Black Hawk Down and things like that. It's really exciting because they're the ones that were actually there and they explain what happened. And so they take that story and then they say, here's the principle of it. And they talk about the leadership principle, and then they say application to business. And so now they apply that story, the principle that they're teaching, and then they apply it to the business world, and they tell a story about a client that they've consulted with where they've applied that. It's really engaging, and it's over really, really quickly. There's about 12 or maybe 15 chapters, but I mean, I couldn't stop listening to it. It's so good, and it has real life application, leadership principles to business, and I strongly encourage everyone to pick up a copy. And I heard it on Audible.
So informative and entertaining. That's a nice combination.
Yes, and I've got a couple of other audio books that are kind of dry and very tonally just. This one really is the first one I can get excited about, and not that I'm a huge Audible fan, but I'm if I keep finding great business books like that on Audible, I will become a raving fan. But this is a great way to start.
Okay, well, very interesting. We have got time for just one more story here, and Erick, no matter how good that book was, as you were listening to it on your phone, I'm going to guess you would not go so far. You would never get so desperate as the person featured in this last story here. He was a passenger on a domestic flight in India. Smartphone was running a little bit low on power, and he tried to work his way into the cockpit to juice it back up. Now, we should say this probably seemed like a good idea to him at the time because he, quote unquote, appeared to be intoxicated. But this just goes to show you, basically, in this day and age, what lengths people will go to make sure their smartphone doesn't run out of power.
Yeah, I tell you, it reminds me of the story that we told a few weeks ago about what was the percentage of folks that would rather be naked in public than not have their cell phone with them? It was like 38% or something crazy, right?
That's right. Yeah.
What have we become with these phones?
They own us. Well, that is all the time that we have this week on the 5-Minute Roundup. Thank you very much for joining us. If you like the show, you want to take a look at older episodes, keep up to date on the new ones coming. What you want to do is subscribe to the ChannelPro Network channel on YouTube, and you will get all that information and all of our past and forthcoming episodes. If you want to read up about the Continuum event this past week, I've got some articles about that up on the ChannelProNetwork.com website. We've got all sorts of other great content too there. So please visit that site on a regular basis. It will return your investment in time. You want to learn more about SPC International and the work that Erick and his folks do with their MSP clients. You want to go to SPC, I want to get it right here, .spc-intl.com, consulting.spc-intl.com. Again, thank you very much for joining us in the 5-Minute Roundup this week. We will be back next week with another episode. Until then, enjoy the rest of this week. Erick and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.